Hello, everyone. I am Margot Kinberg, sitting in for Rebecca Bradley, and this is the Virtual Crime Book Club, where we discuss a different crime novel every month. And this month, we'll be talking about Rachel Howzell's These Toxic Things. Before we get started, if you're watching this at a later time, please know that we are going to be discussing the whole book, which includes the ending and probably spoilers. So if you are planning to read the book, let me strongly suggest that you read it and then come back and watch the recording. You'll probably get a lot more out of it. But that said, let's start with the most basic question. What did you think of the book? Did you enjoy it?
Yep. Yeah. I liked it. It had me guessing right up to the end, which I always like in a well, more or less to the end. But I like that in a crime novel. You don't want all the spoilers in the first chapter.
I would say I was 50-50 with it. I quite enjoyed reading it, but I thought it was, I kind of sussed out what was happening quite early on. And I found the style of writing, or at least some of the content of the writing, quite sort of annoying.
What do you mean? I'm interested in what part you found annoying.
Well, I think it was written for a much younger audience than me. And I felt there was too many sort of contemporary references, which was fine to begin with. It sets the tone and it was going to be a nice, she's setting this as a nice sort of cheerful person, happy family, all the rest of it. But then it just, it was like every paragraph had to have some current reference, right down to I'm cleaning my teeth for 2 minutes. And, I kind of felt it was just overdone.
What about the rest of you? Do you like it? Not like it?
I thought it was a bit different than a normal crime book that you might read, a different way of looking at it. But I can see what Lorna's saying. It was one of those, I enjoyed it, but some of the things I'm not quite sure about. But no, overall, I think it was a good book. I think it's because it was different.
So, you're talking about things that were, maybe were written for a different audience or that were not quite so easy to enjoy. Do you think that might be because of Mickey as narrator?
I don't know. I think it was how the author intended it to be. But I just felt that sometimes it was virtually going into rom-com type of writing rather than a crime one.
I see.
And it just kind of grated after a while because I just felt it was overdone. If you'd set the scene and then just made occasional sort of references, that would have been fine. But I just felt it was overdone, overplayed.
This is the third book of hers that I've read, and I feel the same way. And I wondered if it was a generational thing and how I might felt if I was maybe in my 20s and my 30s. But it was a little bit too much romantic, crime story, and sort of trying to balance between two genres. And I'm like more noir, so that was hard for me.
I wonder if you could call this, what do you folks think? Almost a romantic suspense?
No, because I don't think the romance ever got anywhere. It was just very much aimed at a younger audience, I felt, because
I read some.
I mean, I don't know anyone, and I don't think any of my friends look at dick pics, which seem to be okay.
Well, on one level, wasn't the real love affair between her and her parents, or what turned out to be her adopted parents? And I thought that was beautifully done, actually. The relationship with her parents, the sort of like, and I can't, having said that, so long ago, I can't remember what it was like to be back in my early 20s, but I did think, I certainly can remember, I certainly having, with having a daughter myself, I know the sort of like the desire to keep your children safe, which emanated from those parents, and I kind of think that was where the real love affair was. It was with the relationship with her parents, and the development of that relationship, which and raised up all the questions of what it must feel like to find out you're adopted, when all along you thought you were the natural child of your parents. So I thought that was more interesting than the if you like, the more if you like, the rom-com elements of the various men she had in her and her girlfriends, male relationships and stuff like that.
I'm glad you brought that up about her relationship with her parents, because that was one of the things I was thinking about myself. What did you think about that? Do you think those relationships were accurately depicted? Do you think that, what do you think of them?
I thought it was very refreshing to have a novel where there was no sort of abuse in childhood or bad backstory sort of idea, that she had this loving family and she got on with them so well. So I really liked that aspect of it. I'm not so sure that someone in their 20s isn't still at an age when they're trying to get away from their parents, to be that independent person.
Well,
I've certainly found with my children that, they have this phase of late teens, 20s, when they want to be independent, and then they come back again. Your children.
I mean, she'd more or less been compelled to go back because she'd had that, because of a failed romance with her boss, and so and she was, to a degree, she was trying to maintain independent living whilst essentially living under her parents, or living on her parents' property, because I guess if she was like in the equivalent of an annex or granny apartment or whatever you'd want to call it. So to that, I thought that worked for me. As I say, and while she was also very much, she was still trying to maintain boundaries. Like, I'm really grown up. I'm only here because I have to be, not because I really want to be. A bit like when your kids come back from university and they've got nowhere else to go.
What about her reactions? A couple of you have been talking about, she's a young woman, she's in her 20s, early 20s. Did that ring true? What did you think about her personality? Especially if you have kids of that age or know them. Do you think that was well depicted?
No, I think that all the characters were just two-dimensional, quite frankly. None of them had depth. None of them really provoked reality as far as I was concerned. None of them acted the way that you would think they would. That's why I found the whole book extremely disappointing. It really was. You couldn't get any empathy with anyone. It's my opinion, the way it was written. It was everything was done to the plot, but not because of what would happen in life, in my opinion.
I was very late, so I just joined. But I agree with Norman, because I also did not like any of the characters, especially the main character. I didn't like her at all. She was very shallow, I think. Always, I don't know, her worries were always like about the clothes, her mom's clothes. She was always wearing her mom's clothes. That thing was a bit weird. And I didn't really like any of the characters. I didn't like the book that much. I finished it, but it it was a bit slow, and I didn't really sympathize with her, and I wasn't really afraid for her or anything. So yeah.
So kind of a disappointment for you in terms of how the characters interplayed and how you felt about them.
I actually thought it could have been a really good noir novel if you had this lassie making up these memories, but you still had the oh God, I can't remember the woman's name. It died now. If you still had her giving her story of the real memory behind each item, you know, I think that might have made a more interesting book for me. Because to me, it was quite obvious quite early on that she was the serial killer.
Yeah.
What about the plot line with the digital scrapbooks and the items that she was collecting? What did you think of that?
Well, it all seemed kind of pointless, you know, because they were all odd things that this woman had left out because they all, you know, she made up these little stories that made her out to be this wonderful person, you know, which were all fictitious. So, and you have this young lassie just lapping it all up.
I don't know. Would you want a digital scrapbook of your memories?
Well, certainly not.
I don't know. I think that, you know, this woman was early stage dementia or Alzheimer's, I forget which it was. And yeah, I think it would be very good to have your memory jogged as to what was going on, you know, just as you look at photographs or listen to music. I think it would be good to have memories. But I think the issue would be that as you go through life, the things that are important change all the time. So, you know, unless you can have unlimited amount of memories, the memories you would want to record from your 20s are not the ones you want to record in your 50s.
Yeah, there are those memories maybe we don't want to remember.
It was the only aspect I really liked in the book was this memory making thing. I thought it was a very interesting idea because it's like having a photo album, but you have a bit more information and you can actually go to a place where the memory took place, and you can probably see the memories of your parents when they are dead or something. And it was quite interesting, and all the little stories were nicely made. But yeah, it was a bit pointless because you could already tell that the stories weren't really true.
The other thing I think that was missing in the plot is that they made a point of the murderer putting DD on the bodies, and they referred to that being in all the bodies, but earlier on it was only in 3 of the bodies, and you would think that would give police all over the states the jurisdiction to realize you're on a serial killer and search from there, but there was none of that at all. So when this detective sergeant comes along and then he begins to put things together. That didn't make sense over the period. It didn't ring right at all. You know, that is going to be a feature that every police force would be aware of after the first 2 murders like that. But that
See you
just
tomorrow.
over.
I wondered about that DD myself. What about that serial killer motif? I know some of you, some people enjoy that sort of plot point, some don't, some are kind of either way about it. What did you think of how it was used here?
I think it was very poorly used. If you want to see a good example of someone writing about serial killers with links and everything, if you read works by Val McDermid, when she talks about serial killers, what a difference in style and in emphasis and understanding. This was just thrown in as a number of other ideas, in my opinion, thrown in, wasn't pursued as far as it could have been. It was just, it really was a red herring, in fact, it turned out in the end. Very, it was really not realistic at all, very unbelievable.
So what about the ending of the book? Do you think it played fair with the reader?
Yeah, I suppose it played fair in as much as the clues were there, but the problem was you could solve the whole thing a third of the way through the book, and it just made what was obvious even more obvious. I don't think there was any tricks introduced. It was quite easy to follow, but then it was very easy to solve, so it didn't have much going for it in that score, in my opinion.
It did bring everything together, which I suppose makes an ending that you sort of, it didn't feel like you had many loose ends left that you might have thought, wonder what happened there or wonder what happened here. So from that aspect, I think it did bring everything together. But like you say, there was perhaps some things we would have got a bit earlier that we didn't necessarily need to have pulled together at that time.
So do you think the ending was consistent with the book?
Yeah, but I thought it was a bit too much to mix her personal life with this serial killer. So in one hand, she's making these memories for a serial killer. On the other hand, she had this family tragedy and she finds out that she's adopted. Her dad is a murderer and her dad is chasing her. And okay, I thought everything was very far-fetched. Okay, everything at the same time, it was super far-fetched.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I think the ending was okay. Yeah, it explains everything, but it was a bit too much in terms of the plot. So it felt a bit forced, everything. Like,
yeah, I agree entirely with Vera. I think the whole thing was disappointing. And the best thing about the ending was just that. It was the end of my having to read it.
So, I'm sorry, go ahead. So the different plot lines, the personal life with men she's dating and so on, and the parent thing, and now she's adopted, and the thriller element of being chased and anonymous notes and so on. That was a lot in one book, is what I'm hearing from you. I wonder, did you think it all integrated?
Oh,
to
no.
push the story along?
No,
this could be two separate stories.
Yeah.
So that was the feeling I had. It could work, but it would need to be written in a different way. I don't know. For me, it felt like two different stories. In one hand, we had the story of the memory-making serial killer part. On the other hand, we had her personal life, her relationship with the parents, and then personal tragedy, and then personal life. And then her dad actually killed her mom. So all of this. So for me, these were like two separate plots. I didn't feel that they were really integrated. I don't know. Yeah, I didn't really enjoy the book that much. I finished it because I always finish the books, but it was a bit of a struggle at the end.
Another unbelievable factor was that the guy, the son, employed the private investigator who she sees, the old guy that was following her around. Well, he couldn't have been doing a very good job because he knew nothing about the father or the release or something like that, which would have been easily found out. And the fact he was on the scene, that was just thrown in as, if you like, an odd red herring into the plot. Absolutely no avail, except she was attacked at the end. I couldn't see the point of it. It was really, it could have been so much better if the writer had been more talented and really written the book well, but this was very poor in my opinion.
I think it would have been, do you think you would have enjoyed the book more if the focus had been, let's say, on just the serial killer's plot, or just the murder of the one person whose scrapbook she was creating, or just, see what I'm saying? One of those elements.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
if they've written it on the perspective of the, I forget the name of the girl that took over the shop, the daughter, and how, if she was the main character, then she explained how this historian had come in and imposed herself in there, and the various people had come together there, because she seemed to be a connecting hub. I think it would have been more realistic and much more readable, but to place it in the narrative of the girl that it was, it just too many threads, and just you lost interest altogether, in my opinion.
And she was not very interesting, the main character, Mickey. I didn't think she was very interesting. Yeah, I didn't like her at all. I didn't mind if she would die.
And that brings up a really interesting question, is what do you do with a book where maybe you enjoy the story or elements of it, but you don't like the main character? Does that completely put you off?
Yes,
Does it not?
It makes it a futile read, in fact. You know, you feel like you've wasted your time and go on to the next book. I think it just wasn't enticing. It didn't hold your interest that much. It was too many threads and not enough substance. And as I say, the characters, every one of them were two-dimensional, nothing to like or even have a dislike of it. Just very, very flat.
I mean, I would say it's okay to dislike a character if there's some others in the book that you do like. But as Norman's saying, there was nobody jumped out as a real person that you felt there was a connection for, that you cared about what happened to them. You know, these very caring parents, they kind of wait till our father's out of jail before they go, oh, we better build a fence and protect our property because we're next to an open parkland. You know, it was sort of these unbelievable things that I think just, you know, made you think, well, why did she bother writing it like this? Did she not actually craft the book out? You know, because I think if she had, she would have seen there was a lot of glaring sort of mistakes in it that she could have tightened up.
The character behind that owned the cafe was probably the most person I got the most from. She was sort of, you could imagine her behind the cafe place serving meals and talking to people. So she felt real to me, but the rest of them perhaps didn't.
But if her meals were so fantastic, you know, she would have been making some sort of success of this business, and we're very much led to believe that it's a failing business. So even that didn't, you know, she couldn't have been that great. Her cafe couldn't have been that great. So again,
it was a rundown area, and it was a poor area, and she was cooking like comfort food. So yeah.
And that was another daft thing. It was a very, very rundown area. Would someone really invest and put a lot of money into trying raising up that area into a high-class eatery and so forth? That didn't make sense either. You wouldn't even start there. Any businessman would have put it in a better location, not in something run down. It just wasn't believable.
Especially if you're making some money, if your food's that good.
Yeah.
You know, you bring up another point though, and that is the setting, the sense of where this novel takes place. Did you pick up a sense of setting, of context?
Well, to me, it was meant to be desolation. I think generally the characters were desolate, the area was desolate, but the theme wasn't developed. It was in the background, but I think it was more accidental than purposeful from the way it was brought out. So that didn't work for me either.
You could see some contrast because she was going out with her friends to nice places to have like a cocktail and tapas or whatever. So you could see that there were some nice areas. And then there was this rundown area where there were still some shops and people were trying to make a living. And it was mainly a black area, poorer, but obviously she was black, but she was coming from a very well-off family. And I think that was the point of mentioning all the brands, because she was always mentioning the brands of her mom's clothes. And her mom was a teacher. So like the Gucci bag and the Gucci shoes.
You kind of wonder.
And these things are quite expensive in the US. So I was like, wow, this teacher, she must earn very well, because the European brands are even more expensive in the US. So I think this part was all very strange. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting, we come back again to the relationship she has with her parents. And, you know, on the one level, they have this bond, they spend time together, she's living with them, etc., etc. And on the other, they don't tell her about her own past. And her birth father comes back. I just wanted to return to that relationship because it forms a central part of the plot.
Well, I was thinking, I mean, the thing is, she is only in her early 20s, and that'd be an awful, you know, you try to imagine the conversation you'd have had with, say, your teenager saying, oh, by the way, actually, I'm not your mum, I'm your aunt, because your mum was murdered by your father. And he's been in prison ever since. But you know, hey, we're really your parents. You can quite see why the adopted parents might very well want to bury their head in the sand and not do anything about it until the reality is he's out of prison and might come after their daughter or their adopted daughter. So I can quite see why they wouldn't have had the conversation earlier. Until then they were presented with a major problem, which they didn't really know how to deal with. I didn't find that particularly difficult to believe.
But then it would be easy enough to bring up any child to say you're adopted, because a very young child, it's just a word, it doesn't mean anything. They are still mum and dad, and they can say it's chosen. And you know, it's probably not until they're into teens that they're actually going to click with them. Well, who actually were my real parents?
Yeah.
And then the conversation would come from that.
Yeah, except that maybe, I mean, I go back to the fact that, you know, they might very well have thought that way, and then they would have thought, well, even then, how would we tell the family history? No, I'm sort of like I'll give them the benefit of the doubt on being, you know, not wanting to have the difficult conversation.
Jane, don't you think being in the same area, they may have had this dilemma of how to deal with it, but in that area, the release of the father, the murder was committed in the area, neighbours must have known the identity, and so forth. You know, and they were intelligent parents, I'm sure have come to them. Again, it wasn't realistic the way they handled it. I sound a terrible critic of the poor girl, but
I also did not find very believable why the father will come after her. So the guy killed her mom because he had problems, and he was in jail for like 20 years, and he's out, and the first thing he does is to come after her. Why? I don't know. I didn't believe that. If he didn't want her, he would just go away and do not want to see her. Why did he try to kill her. It was, I don't know, I think it was a bit far-fetched also. It wasn't really very well explained. He was in jail for so many years, so how come he would go after her as soon as he's out?
Do you think it impacted the story that it's written in the present tense for the most part?
Yeah, some things are difficult because everything, the action needs to be witnessed by her. So this causes some problems because everything needs to happen while she's there, because we only have a few chapters from the perspective of the killer. So yeah, that makes it a bit more difficult. And also because her thoughts are not very interesting, and we are always having to listen to her, to read her thoughts all over again. So
well, it comes back to the too many threads that we don't really get into any of them properly.
But do you get put off when a book is written in the present tense, or does that not
No, not
interrupt
usually.
you?
no,
Well, it's
but I like character development, and I think it's probably more difficult to do like character development if you are writing the book like this. But no.
If you'd asked me 5 years ago, would I read a book written in the present tense, I'd have probably said no, because I didn't read many of them, or hadn't read many of them. Recently, they seem virtually every book I read appears to be in the present tense, and I actually really like it now. But I say it's quite a difficult. It's a hurdle to cut. Well, I say it was a hurdle for me to cross to even get as far as thinking, oh, okay, it's written in the first tense, in present tense, but I'll give it a go anyway. That was for a long time, that was off-putting for me. But now, as I say, I've recently got over that, and now really enjoy it as a style.
But I would have
because it makes you, but it has to be. Having said that, I can quite take the point that it has to be done well, and you have to really feel like you're getting inside the character's head, because otherwise it's just doesn't really come off. And I'm guessing people here didn't really feel they got into her head, which is, I think, is a very fair comment, particularly as she is so young, because again, if you're of a certain age, well, as I say, I can't really remember what. Well, I know it was very different when I was in my 20s, but I can't really remember what it was like.
It was such a miss of a lost opportunity, because if you write something in the present tense, you can build up so much suspense and so much interest in what's taking place outside. But this lady was no Virginia Woolf or Mrs. Dalloway, I'm afraid. It was far from it, and she lost the opportunity by writing in that style. It could have been done so much better.
Presumably it's written in the present tense because the author very much wanted us to think it's a book of now. You know, everything down to even mentioning the pandemic and things like that. You know, this is a book for now, and it certainly won't. You know, I think if you were to read it in 5 years' time, it will read really dated.
So all in all, then, a bit of a mixed bag, and maybe more than a bit of a mixed bag with this one. Couple of things that you liked as a group, and a lot that missed the mark or could have been different, or might have got your attention better if it had been different. So that leads me to the question: would you read something else by Howzell Hall?
No way. Waste of a week. I don't even want to repeat it.
Having read now, having been through 3 books, I would not do a 4th, but I must say, every time I had one of her books and I gave it to someone else, they thoroughly enjoyed it. So I think it's just a matter of taste. And her especially for people who like California, because she writes a lot of her stories are set in California. And but even I've been surprised that even women my age enjoy her, because I found her, for want of a better word, less mature in her writing style and her outlook. And but she's really, really popular.
She is, and you make an interesting point about her style. There's a new category, sort of subgenre out now called New Adult, where books are not really YA, but at the same time, you know, I wonder if we might put this book in that category. What do you folks think?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know the
I
category.
don't
but
know.
Yeah.
You know, having been brought up in the days before genres and such like, so it's at a young age I was reading things like Jane Austen and Trollope and things. And I think that you're better for reading something that's well written. And I'm not convinced that this was well written. So, and I don't think, no, I don't care what age you are, you deserve a book that's well written.
It's an
Well, that was a
interesting.
stopper.
It's an interesting question about genre and labeling. It's got its advantages, and perhaps it's a whole separate topic we could talk about at some point. It's got its advantages, but I think that sometimes it can put people off books that are really excellent, but they might say, well, that's YA, I don't read YA. But this is a really excellent book. Or it could prevent younger people from reading some books that are truly excellent, that they might think, oh, that's just going to be boring. It's not going to be for me. It's a really interesting question. Does anyone have anything else that you'd like to add, to bring up about the book?
Just as a general comment, it was meant to be a book to illustrate a Black writer, because it was Black Writers Month and so forth. I mean, there's obviously the odd reference here and there to what it's like to being a Black person, but no emphasis on that at all. I mean, this could have been any author whatsoever. I don't think that fitted into a genre of particularly a Black authoress's book. It was just happened to be a book whose authoress happened to be Black. None of those ideas were promoted. And again, that could have been brought in, and that would have made the book a little bit more interesting and understandable. Just wasn't there.
Other comments that you'd like to make? Okay. We will meet again. We will meet again on Monday, 6th December. So do tune in, and you are welcome to join the book club, or you are welcome to watch the YouTube video a little later time.
Okay.